The Radical Rebellion: How Black Women Are Shattering Success Paradigms Through Entrepreneurship. Thank you all for being here today. I'm truly honored to stand before you to share extraordinary insights from my profound conversation with Louise Sidnick, a visionary force who isn't merely building businesses, but architecting entirely new paradigms of success. Louise has fundamentally transformed how thousands of women conceptualize ambition, community, and authentic achievement. Her work doesn't simply inspire, it liberates. Through her revolutionary approach to entrepreneurship, she's creating blueprints for a more humane economy where wellness and wealth aren't opposing forces, but harmonious partners. What I'm about to share with you today challenges one of our most deeply held cultural mythologies about achievement and progress. We've been fed a very particular narrative about success in America. It's a story etched into our collective consciousness. Work harder than everyone else, sacrifice everything: your health, your relationships, your joy. Push through pain until it becomes normal. Climb the ladder rung by painful rung. Break the ceiling even as the glass shards cut you. And eventually, if you're resilient enough, if you can just endure enough suffering, you'll make it. This narrative has been especially potent for marginalized communities. For Black women in particular, resilience isn't just a buzzword in a corporate handbook. It's been positioned as the only possible path forward in systems that were explicitly designed to exclude us. But what if this singular focus on resilience is actually limiting our vision? What if the most revolutionary act isn't just surviving within broken systems, but creating entirely new ones? This is the counterintuitive idea I want to explore with you today. The most powerful response to exclusion isn't just resilience, it's innovation. And no group demonstrates this more powerfully than Black women entrepreneurs in America today. Between 2017 and 2024, the number of Black women owned businesses increased by more than 40%, outpacing every other demographic group in America. That's nearly 2.7 million businesses. Think about that for a moment. In a landscape where Black women face systemic underfunding, where we receive less than 1% of venture capital, where we encounter both racial and gender bias simultaneously, we are still the fastest growing entrepreneurial demographic in the country. The conventional wisdom would frame this as a triumph of resilience. Look how they overcome obstacles. But as Louise Sidney so eloquently articulated in our conversation, this framing misses something profound happening beneath the surface. What's actually unfolding is a revolution in how we define success itself. Black women aren't just building businesses, they're redefining entire industries. They're creating intentional communities where vulnerability is strength. They're prioritizing holistic well being over traditional notions of hustle culture. They're demonstrating that success doesn't have to come at the expense of health or authenticity. This isn't just about economic necessity, it's about rewriting what success looks like for ourselves and future generations. Let me share three key insights from my conversation with Louise that illuminate this radical shift. First, Black women are leading a revolution in entrepreneurship by building businesses that prioritize community impact and personal wellness. They're proving that success doesn't have to come at the expense of health or authenticity. Second, despite being among the most educated groups in America, Black women remain underrepresented in leadership roles and continue to face systemic barriers like pay gaps and higher unemployment rates. But these challenges haven't led to defeat, they've fueled innovation. And third, the rapid growth in Black women owned businesses highlights both a response to exclusion from traditional systems and an opportunity. We're not waiting for permission, we're creating new paths for ourselves and others. Let's look more closely at what's happening here because it's revolutionary. The data tells us something remarkable and disturbing simultaneously. Despite being the most educated demographic, with high college enrollment rates according to National Center for Education Statistics data, only about 4% of Black women reach C suite executive positions at major US companies. The most educated, yet the least represented in leadership. This isn't a coincidence, it's a pattern. The conventional wisdom suggests that education is the great equalizer. Get the degree, get the credentials, and opportunities will follow. But for Black women, that equation has never balanced. What's fascinating and what Louise illuminated so powerfully in our conversation is how this gap has become a catalyst for entrepreneurship. When traditional paths to advancement prove resistant, Black women aren't simply accepting the status quo, they're building alternatives that fundamentally challenge it. As Louise shared with me, when you realize the game wasn't designed for you to win, you don't just play harder, you create a new game with different rules. This isn't just about individual success stories, it's about a collective reimagining of what work can be. Let me share a specific example from our conversation. Louise highlighted luxury food service entrepreneurs who are integrating wellness principles directly into their business models. These aren't just restaurants or catering companies, they're holistic experiences that nourish body, mind, and community simultaneously. One founder creates culinary experiences that incorporate mindfulness practices, sources ingredients from Black farmers, pays living wages to all staff, and structures her business to accommodate her own chronic health condition. The food is exceptional, yes, but it's the integrated approach to well being that truly distinguishes her work. This founder isn't succeeding despite prioritizing wellness, she's succeeding because of it. Her approach tracks clients who share these values and creates loyalty that transcends the typical customer relationship. What's happening here is a profound shift in how we conceptualize the relationship between work and well being. Rather than seeing self care as something you squeeze in after work if there's time left, these entrepreneurs are embedding it directly into their business models. This approach stands in stark contrast to traditional workplace environments, where, as Louise pointed out, conformity often stifles authenticity. Many corporate spaces still demand a kind of sameness that ignores cultural identity and contributes to burnout and disconnection. Kelly King Jackson describes this phenomenon as hustling backwards, the exhausting process of contorting yourself to fit into spaces that weren't designed with you in mind. But what if you could build a space designed precisely for your full self to thrive? This is exactly what's happening across the country. Black women entrepreneurs aren't just building businesses, they're cultivating spaces where mental, emotional, and spiritual health are prioritized alongside profit. They're implementing flexible scheduling for chronic illness management. They're integrating self care into company culture and policies. They're launching brands designed around holistic experiences rather than pure transactions. And perhaps most importantly, they're creating supportive ecosystems, mentoring others facing similar challenges and multiplying positive effects across their communities. This brings me to another critical insight from my conversation with Louise: the community centered nature of Black women's entrepreneurship. The conventional model of business success often centers individual achievement, the lone genius entrepreneur who disrupts an industry through sheer force of will. But the businesses Louise described follow a different pattern. They're deeply embedded in community needs and oriented toward collective advancement. This isn't accidental. It reflects a cultural orientation toward communal well being that has deep historical roots. For generations, Black women have been at the forefront of community care and mutual aid networks. Today's entrepreneurs are translating these values into business models that generate profit while strengthening community bonds. One entrepreneur Louise mentioned has built a tech platform that connects Black women professionals across industries. What began as a simple networking tool has evolved into a powerful ecosystem for mentorship, investment, and collaboration. Members don't just find jobs, they find investors, partners, and lifelong supporters. The platform is profitable, yes, but its true value lies in the community it fosters. It creates a space where Black women can bring their whole selves, share resources, and lift each other up. This community centered approach represents a fundamental reimagining of what business can be. Rather than extracting value from communities, these entrepreneurs are generating value with and for their communities. And here's where we encounter another counterintuitive truth: this approach isn't just morally compelling, it's competitively advantageous. By deeply understanding the needs of underserved communities, these entrepreneurs identify market opportunities that others miss. By building authentic relationships with their customers, they create loyalty that transcends transactional exchanges. By prioritizing worker well being, they cultivate teams that bring their best creativity and energy to their work. What we're witnessing isn't just a response to exclusion, it's the emergence of a more humane, sustainable, and ultimately more successful approach to business. Now, I want to be clear about something. Celebrating this innovation doesn't mean we should stop fighting against the systemic barriers that make it necessary. The fact that Black women receive less than 1% of venture capital funding remains an unconscionable inequity. The persistent wage gaps and hiring biases that limit opportunities in traditional workplaces demand urgent attention and reform. But as we work to dismantle these barriers, we should also recognize and learn from the innovative responses they've provoked. What if the future of business isn't found in Silicon Valley or Wall Street, but in the creative adaptations of those who've been excluded from those spaces? What if the most valuable business insights come not from privilege, but from the necessity of creating alternatives to broken systems? As Louise so powerfully articulated, we're not just building businesses, we're building blueprints for a more humane economy. I stand before you today not just to share information, but to issue a challenge to rethink everything you thought you knew about success, ambition, and achievement. What would happen if you stopped accepting the broken rules of a game rigged against your authentic self? What might you create if wellness was non negotiable? How might you lead if community impact was central to your definition of success? The revolution being led by Black women entrepreneurs isn't just for Black women, it's a blueprint for anyone who's ever felt that success demanded too high a price. It's an invitation to imagine business as a force for healing rather than extraction. It's a radical vision of work that nourishes rather than depletes. Today, I urge you to examine the unquestioned assumptions about success that govern your life and work. Ask yourself, who wrote these rules? Who benefits from them? And most importantly, what might be possible if you dare to write new ones? The most profound insight from my conversation with Louise wasn't about business strategy or market opportunities. It was about freedom, the freedom to define success on your own terms, to build structures that support your wholeness, to create communities that lift everyone up. This isn't just a conversation about entrepreneurship, it's about liberation. And it begins with a simple but revolutionary question: what if the most radical act of rebellion is to succeed without sacrificing your soul? Thank you.